views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey everybody, time for the Bronx Buzz. You know we get together every Thursday night and we talk to Bronx reporters. It's kind of our little Bronx Reporters Roundtable. Gives us a little insight as to who they are, what they're writing about, and you get a real inside look at what they're thinking about when they put stuff to paper or to the internet. Tonight we have two great guests. One is here, the other is going to be joining us by Skype. Ed Garcia-Condi, the much beloved by most blogger from welcometothebronx.com. So great to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
You were on our first show, right? Way
Yes.
back in March.
Yeah,
All right, nice
way
to have
back.
you back. And via Skype, it is Conrad Putzier, I think, from the Real Deal Real Estate magazine and news blog. So Conrad, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thanks
Great.
for having me.
Nice to have you. We're going to start with Ed, and then we're going to get to you in a couple of minutes, so just hang in there. Ed, lots going on. You've been writing about a lot of different things. It's interesting, though, because people identify you with the South Bronx and with your advocacy against gentrification, and you were the mayor of Melrose. I guess unofficially you still are. But when I asked you what you want to talk about, the first thing was Rodman's Neck over in City Island. What's going on at Rodman's Neck?
Well, Rodman's Neck, as anyone who lives in the Bronx, especially in City Island, knows, it's the NYPD training ground. And about 3 years ago, the city said it needed about $150 million in repairs. And now this week, the city issued another amount saying that they're going to upgrade the facilities for $275 million. So that's the plan. But, of course, there's controversy because a lot of people in City Island don't even want Rodman's Neck to be there.
So in other words, this is a compromise to the people who complained about the noise, because any of us who have been on City Island, I don't live there, but you've been there, and you say, well, wait a minute, what are those firecrackers? And in fact, you can hear them, across the bay over there. But you're saying that some people said we would rather have had the negotiation be put Rodman's Neck elsewhere.
Correct.
Do we have a sense of, if they spend, and you had told me it was $275 million, if they spend $275 million, will it solve the noise problem? I shudder to think.
Well, that's the $1 million or the $275 million question. Because everything that the media has spoken about so far doesn't even mention that. All they do is
really.
Yep.
It was the first question I asked.
Exactly, and that's what we as Bronxites, we would ask that. But all they're talking about is infrastructure. They're not connected to sewer lines, so they have to connect to the sewer lines, gas lines. The buildings are just. They haven't done anything since the city acquired it in the 1960s. So it's just in need of major overhaul.
Wouldn't we like to think that if the city is going to spend $275 million, that even though people from City Island might have wanted Rodman's Neck to go, that they would make it enclosed, and there must be ways of putting the ballasts up and making sure that you don't hear it. I guess I've just answered my own question. Wouldn't we like to think that?
Yeah, I mean, it should have gone into, and I think Bratton had mentioned this a couple years ago, it was supposed to go into the $1 billion police academy that they built in Queens. But because of budget constraints and the climate, it wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't.
And I'm going to say this is a horrible thing to say, and why not screw the people of the Bronx? They don't like it. We don't really care if they don't like it. Whatever. Anyway, that was unnecessary and uncalled for. I know that. Ed, you're also interested in the city council races coming up. I know for me, on the other show we do, I will likely do debates in all those races. But both of the races for the 13th council district, the one currently held by Jimmy Vacca, and the 18th currently held by Annabelle Palmer, will be vacated. And it looks like there's a pretty healthy dialogue of candidates. Where do you want to go? I'll go anywhere you want.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a note that it's definitely two seats to be aware of what's going on, especially with the 18th. With so many people vying, you have Senator Diaz, who
Right. No, well, it hasn't been announced.
hasn't been
but it
announced,
certainly,
but he has his eyes on it.
Seems like he wants
Yeah.
to move to the city council.
Yeah, and then you have Jonai, who who threw in his hat also in the 13th district, which is
13th.
already pretty full. I think there are about 5 candidates right now, at least, that have announced. So those are definitely two to be aware of.
Because those are the names that many people in the Bronx are already familiar with, and I want to make it very clear because of what I do in this borough in moderating all the debates. We may not mention everybody, but I'm certainly not favoring or encouraging anybody in any direction other than just evaluating. Elvin Garcia,
Yes.
who was a borough liaison, I think, with the mayor's
Correct.
office, is going to be running in the 18th.
Correct.
And then you also mentioned to me, and we know that John Doyle, who has been well known in City Island, is running in the 13th. They both seem to have raised money.
Yeah,
lately.
and
I thought that was interesting.
That was very interesting. These are 2 guys that are running against the establishment. They have no establishment support whatsoever. And Elvin, actually, last week, he was able to meet the campaign finance deadline, and I believe it was double the amount of what they had expected and hoped for to get. In fact, he exceeded every other candidate's filings. So that's pretty amazing, considering that, again, no support from the establishment. And John Doyle, for the 13th district, he also did more than he expected. They had like a target number, and they exceeded
that
as well.
To me, and again, I'm very clear. I'm not supporting any candidate or whatever, and I know we're not naming everybody. We'll get to everybody ultimately. The lack of participation in voting in the Bronx is just hard. I mean, it's horrifying. Maybe this sort of election will get people involved, you think, in the East Bronx and also in the South Bronx?
Yeah, definitely in the East Bronx. Especially with this past presidential election, people are still riled up with the results. So I think there are going to probably be more people at the polls this time, because that's been the push right now that you hear since the presidential election, is that get people more involved on the local level, since we didn't do so well, or so other people might think we did well.
Some people would say that. Well, and real quick, because I do want to move to Conrad. The Republican Party is established. The Bronx Republican Party, which has been absent for many, many years in many ways, is establishing a little, a place with which they haven't had. It'll be interesting to see how that plays with a Republican administration, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Last thing I want to say, and that'll be a nice bridge into Conrad. Many people in the Bronx were very happy that the New York Times selected the South Bronx as one of the 52 worldwide destination places to check out. You editorialized this was yet another indication of something going wrong. So we'll give you a chance to just restate that, and you can go to Welcome to the Bronx and read all about it.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw that the South Bronx was on that list of 52 places in the world to go in 2017, I was like, okay, here we go again. And then when I looked into it...
Here we go again, good or bad?
Bad, because whenever the New York Times does something that's real estate related, it's sort of like another nail in the coffin for that neighborhood, for gentrification. And sure enough, when the New York Times did their little byline on why visit the South Bronx, all they did was mention businesses that were there for 1 year or less, literally 1 year or less. No one has Bronx roots except one, Milk Burger. And they were all connected. Again, the exception was Milk Burger, to Keith Rubenstein of Somerset Partners. So all they did was mention literally everything that was connected to him.
So you would have rather, you didn't mind, I mean, it's nice, and we certainly want to bring money in from the outside, but for you, you would want to have highlighted some of the great things and the great people and businesses and other institutions that we've had in the Bronx and in that part of the Bronx.
Absolutely. Institutions that have been there through the fires, that have been there through the worst parts of the years. The people who actually rebuilt the neighborhood, they deserve the credit, not people who are just jumping in on the bandwagon after we all did the hard work of getting this place, back
Which
in order.
Is a perfect segue to our Skype guest. He's been waiting patiently, Conrad Puzier from The Real Deal. Thank you, Conrad, for waiting. What is the attitude among developers and real estate people now as regards the Bronx? We here in the Bronx, I mean, we are internal about it, but you can really give us a perspective because we hear all the time the Bronx leadership is talking about the Bronx is the next destination, the Bronx is fertile ground for development. What is the reality on the real estate developer side?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, by way of intro, The Real Deal is a real estate business news magazine. So my perspective is strictly business. We don't really have a political perspective on this.
That's fine. That's why I brought Ed here. He's going to take care of that for you.
Right. Yeah. So we can talk about this. But we've noticed in the last few years, and I'm sure Ed has noticed that too, is that real estate developers have become a lot more interested in the Bronx as an investment opportunity. And that's taken two forms. On one hand, you see Ed and Keith Rubenstein. There's a bunch of developers that have moved to the South Bronx, to Monthaven, with the idea of just building new developments. And then the second part of it, you have a lot of investment funds in the Bronx, buying out portfolios of multifamily buildings. It's kind of a safe, stable asset to invest. So those are two very different things. But both are kind of driven by the same trend, which is land and real estate is just become too expensive in Manhattan, too expensive in Brooklyn, too expensive in Queens. So developers, they don't want to sit around, do something. So they look around and see what's next, and they see the Bronx.
Mm-hmm. And so is there actually, and the name of this show is the Bronx Buzz, is there actually a buzz in the development community that the Bronx is the place? And then I'm going to break that down because I have Ed Garcia Condi is watching what I say to respond to this, so I'm going to make sure he's happy. But so is the development community buzzing, as is alleged about the borough of the Bronx, that this is the next frontier?
It is. We published a story in late 2015. The gist of the story was basically that Bronx is the next big thing. The title was The Bronx Feeding Frenzy. All the developers are going to the Bronx. And the interesting thing to us was we tracked the readership numbers. This is one of the most read stories of the year. So all the people that read us are in the real estate industry, and they see a story about the Bronx, and they just jump on it. So that to me shows how big the interest is.
So the second part of what you said, if I understood and heard it correctly, is that then there's another whole level of building in the Bronx, maybe for affordability, building residences and those kinds of things. People are very concerned that they're all going to be market rate, and that market rate will leave them out. Again, I know my colleague right here is waiting for me to ask the question. So is there a buzz that you can build affordability, you can tap into the mayor's agenda of 200,000 new apartments, and do it from a way that will make money for everybody, but keep the people in the Bronx in place?
Yeah, but I guess it depends on how you define affordability, right? And I'm sure Ed has plenty to say about this. I think there is a buzz among developers to create affordability within the parameters of the 421A tax abatement program, which means people will build mostly market rate units with a percentage of those units set aside for most middle-income families. Mm-hmm. So not so much low-income housing or middle-income housing.
Mm-hmm. Conrad, I'm sorry that I didn't really introduce you properly because we were already knee-deep in our conversation. So, Conrad, you told me beforehand you're from Germany. You came here to the States. Just a little background about you and what your interest is and what your knowledge is in real estate.
Yeah, so I came to New York from Germany 4 years ago. I've been at The Real Deal for 2 years. The Real Deal is kind of a go-to news publication for the real estate industry. We have a monthly magazine that reaches 60,000 readers, a website that reaches about 1 million readers a month. And my role is just to report on the real estate industry. So I don't just cover the Bronx, like Manhattan, we cover all the boroughs, we cover finance, cover residential real estate, luxury apartment sales, we cover housing policy, so it's really the whole gamut.
Mm-hmm. Well, what background do you have, and what is the transition like from being in Germany and then coming here and really having to get involved in our lives and learn about who we are so that you can report on it properly? I just kind of want to connect your roots to what you do now. Is that a challenge? Is that easy? Did you have the right background to be able to come here with all us lunatics and try and figure that out?
I definitely did not have the right background. So, I studied Soviet history, so that's the entire opposite of New York luxury.
Yeah. Well, I have to interject. It depends what the president does. You never know what we're going to turn out to be over here.
Right.
That's another dialogue. Go ahead.
And Trump, by the way, we've talked about Trump too. So for what it's worth, it makes my job more interesting. So yeah, it's been a tough transition. I had to learn neighborhood names, I had to learn all the industry speak that people use. But it took me a year or two. I got the hang of it.
Great. Well, listen, we're going to take a short break. Then we're going to be back. I think we're really going to talk a little bit more about what it's going to take, because I know this is on Ed's mind, what it's going to take to develop the Bronx and what developers need to hear to be able to do that in a way that hopefully will keep everybody in place as much as possible. So we're going to take a break. Our guest today, Ed Garcia Condi, who is from Welcome to the Bronx, and Conrad Putzier, who's from The Real Deal. We'll be buzzing more right after this.
Sure, I look cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self. And I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family?
This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry.
Go long, son!
it's always worth it.
Whoa!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Oh my God, go! Oh, Shane, look out!
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Okie dokie, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. Ed Garcia Condi is our guest from Welcome to the Bronx, and on Skype, down there in Manhattan somewhere, it is Conrad Putzier from The Real Deal, and that is a real estate paper. Ed, speaking of real estate, and Conrad might be interested in this as well, Young Woo Associates got, I thought in a way they did best, and even though they didn't get the Kingsbridge Armory that they wanted, that is still, we don't even have to go there, it's still, mired. But he apparently is doing very well. What are your expectations for the former Bronx GPO at 149th Street? Are you looking forward to seeing what he comes up with?
I'm actually definitely looking forward to it.
Like that was good development.
We still have to wait to see what actually goes in there.
Oh, okay.
But it was what was really interesting is that I actually, a year before they bought it, I had laid out the plans of what it should look like if they were going to develop it. Someone was going to develop it, and Young Woo pretty much did it exactly the way I had written about it a year ago. So
I remember that.
I won't go any further on that.
Do we think that he saw your stuff? I mean,
absolutely.
You think he did?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It's true. And the reason I know that is because they didn't have any intentions for office space in between the market level and the rooftop. And I had a conversation with them, and they said, we were talking. I said,
listen. I want to move forward.
Yeah.
And I want to get Conrad back in the dialogue. I thought that was a good fit.
Yeah.
And so do we know when it's going to be done?
It's supposed to be sometime. Originally it was spring 2017, but I walk by it all the time, and it still needs a lot of work.
You have been a very strong critic of the borough president and a lot of the development initiatives in the Bronx. I mean, I'm not telling anybody anything they don't already know. If you were the borough president, or if you could really dictate, how would you, or what would you say to developers that would develop the Bronx in a way that would displace as few people as possible. Is it possible to do that? It's the question in the Bronx now.
It's possible as long as you don't build, an overwhelming amount of market rate housing in a neighborhood. I think one of the good things about the mayor's plan, even though I don't agree with the zoning, is permanently affordable housing. Whenever a new development goes up that has to be rezoned, a certain percentage has to be dedicated to permanent housing. The reason that's important is because we might get all these new affordable housing buildings, but they're not permanently affordable. A lot of these developments
they'll be affordable initially, but
initially, exactly, and then they can just go straight to market.
Conrad, in the development community, how I don't know how to put this. How accepting are they of regulations and other things? And I guess you go back to 421A. Is that vital in encouraging them to do some of the things that Mr. Garcia is recommending?
Yeah, I think the industry's attitude towards regulations depends on whether there's money attached to it. So generally they don't like regulations, most businesses, but in the case of 421A, they love it because there's a tax subsidy involved. So it's a big drama when 421A expired a year ago. Now it looks like it might be coming back. I'm very excited about this. But what we did notice is the outer boroughs, Brooklyn and Queens and the Bronx, there was a lot less activity when 421A was expired.
You're saying there was less activity when 421A expired?
Yeah, the reason developers like the subsidy, they think they need the subsidy, and the argument is without the subsidy that comes along with 421A, you can't afford to pay the price of land, you can't afford to make a development profitable.
Mm-hmm. Do you see, we've had some large developments in the Bronx. Do you see a lot of bidding on these developments? Or is it really, for example, we're at the Hutch Metro Center right now, and that, of course, is a Simone development. Many people have been pleased with what they've done here in creating this park. But do you see a lot of bidding? Is there competition? Or is there really one or two developers that say, okay, we want this, and they end up getting it because nobody else wants it?
Oh, there's crazy competition
really?
For any development site in the city. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's barely any development sites in Manhattan. There's fewer and fewer in Brooklyn. And there's so many developers in the city, and they want to do something. They don't want to sit on their hands, and so they're always looking for development sites. And any good development site that could put to profitable use will get dozens of bids, or plenty of developers that are interested in it. Now, it always depends on how complicated the site is, whether it's a special project, the Kingswood Armory, a special case. But if it's a plain vanilla empty development site, you can bet on there being a ton of for it.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. Ed, you and I have had private dialogues, and I know you've put it on your blog about prices. You're always interested to say, well, why is this going for this price? Talk to me about some of the discrepancies you've seen over the last several months. It's almost like I always check in with Ed to say, what do you think of this development, so I can get another point of view. But prices have been unusual. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of speculative prices in the market, prices that aren't necessarily supported. I was in the appraisal industry for almost 20 years. So, when I see a price that's above, I'm like, that's a little tricky. You're seeing it on the concourse now also with apartments. There was an apartment in October a 2-bedroom apartment that they listed for $575,000, which was almost $200,000 above market rate. That what could be supported via an appraisal. So you're seeing a lot of people trying to push the envelope, trying to with all the attention and the buzz that's happening, they want to see what they can get away with.
Is that a way of for want of a better term, integrating a neighborhood with upper and lower, or does that scare you because you think if the rest of the building is not protected, it's going to go and it'll literally change the neighborhood in that way?
That's exactly what happens. Once these prices start going up so rapidly, it starts pushing it away from the hands of people who live in the neighborhood who might be able to buy them.
One of the things I was concerned about when they built the new Yankee Stadium, and frankly I think my fears were realized, is I always thought instead of that mall, which I know is useful to many people in the Bronx, they should have built a community along the waterfront, put in restaurants owned by Bronxites and really develop that community. Instead, we kind of got top down. My thought was you've got maybe $1 billion that goes into Yankee Stadium, and all that money gets in their cars or gets on the train and goes out of the borough. If you had built a community that people would want to go, a waterfront, then you're getting that money. My point is, isn't bringing some of that money into the Bronx a good thing because you're bringing in money from the outside as opposed to having people who, in many cases, don't have a lot of money to spend, and that helps build the borough and kind of raise everybody's level.
Yeah, it is a great thing, but at the same time, there's always that fine line that you have to be able to navigate, because what you have is then you have a business that all of a sudden is doing well because you have all this outside money coming in.
Right.
Then the landlord gets wind, and he's like, okay, I'm going to jack your rent up double. And that's actually been documented with several businesses.
Conrad, are there neighborhoods in the Bronx that you hear a bigger buzz on? I mean, I forget already, maybe it was your publication that put out that Kingsbridge was like the next frontier or whatever. I know Ed doesn't like that, but it was put out. Do you have certain sections of the Bronx, or can you describe what it is that developers really have their eye on, like what would be more prized property, let's say, than others?
So as far as development goes, the most popular neighborhood by far is Mott Haven, anything that's close to Manhattan. And that's not just true for the Bronx, it's true for any neighborhood in the city, whether you talk about Queens, whether you talk about Brooklyn. What makes a neighborhood attractive is how far away is it from the town. And we did a map in 2015 about all the developments currently underway in the Bronx, and really almost all the big developments were close to the waterfront in the south of the Bronx.
Yeah, it's all a matter of proximity. Listen, you could trace the history of the borough of the Bronx, and it literally developed around the subway lines. And of course, Ed and I had a conversation about the loss of the 3rd Avenue subway and what that has meant and how that's changed the way development is done. Conrad, we're going to thank you so much for being with us. I want you to say hello to all our friends over there at The Real Deal and encourage you folks to keep doing what you're doing, because it really is a vital part of the dialogue in the Bronx, especially right now. And we appreciate you spending the time with us today. And we hope you or some others will come on the show, maybe even come all the way up here to the Bronx and be with us in person.
Yeah, that's it. Next time.
Thank you. Ed Garcia-Condi, you got anything next real quick that you want to mention?
No, just...
more of the same.
More of the same, exactly.
All right, if you got a question, he'll answer it. You may not like his answer, but he will answer it. I can promise you that. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for being with us. We will be on Bronx Talk Monday night. We'll be back here Thursday night for The Buzz, and we'll see you. Good night.
We are neighbors and best friends.
I love my sister.
My heart doesn't see race. Love is love.